Welcome to EMTalk. These are the stories of saving lives from the people who saved them. Today's episode, Is My Scene Safe? How to ensure the well-being of first responders. Here to discuss saving lives, licensed paramedic, your host, Juddson Smith.
Yes, I am Juddson Smith, the licensed paramedic. I have been in the administrative side of things for quite some time, last 7 years, and so spent just a little bit of time on the truck. So I thought I'd bring somebody in that actually spends some time on the truck still and might be able to cover this topic a little better with us. He's actually had some really good experience. So my guest today is Mr. Zachary Bangert, and I'll call him Zach throughout because it's really weird to call somebody by their full first name when you've never called them that before.
First name's actually Kenneth.
Your first name's actually Kenneth?
There is.
Wow, I guess Zach and I don't know each other at all. This is so embarrassing.
You only signed a lot of my paperwork.
That's true. I
All
did.
said Kenneth on it.
I did. That's accurate. I guess, but I've never called you Kenneth before. It's pretty funny.
Judd was my biggest preceptor
Yeah,
to
you're
become a paramedic.
yeah, your lead
Back
preceptor.
in the
That's
day,
right.
a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. This is my explanation of who you are is similar to how like Yoda would describe Luke. You know, the Padawan has become the master.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were the student, but I would say you're a better paramedic than I am for sure.
I deny that.
Well, anyway, so I brought you on today because you have a lot of experience with scene safety issues, not to any fault of your own, and we'll jump into that later. We'll kind of have a generic conversation first because really we have a ton of crazy stuff going on in the world. And first responders are just constantly being put at risk. And, you know, some first responders, police officers, it's kind of part of their job. They realize they have to be at risk in order to keep the rest of us safe. And that, not to diminish that. I know you have a brother in law enforcement, and I think that's super awesome. That's important. But usually, like our side of the first responder world, we're not supposed to be in that situation, but we get put in it a lot. So my first question, I'm going to hit on something big right off the bat. I don't want to get political about it, but what do you think it's like being a first responder at like these, peaceful protests that are going on at universities right now?
I've never experienced anything like a peaceful protest, but um, I think the big thing in something like that, but anything in EMS in general, is you're always wanting to expect the unexpected because you never know what's going to pop off. I mean, you're there, and most people, I would say the majority, are going to respect why you're there, and they're going to want you to be safe because they know that you're the ones keeping them safe if they need it.
True.
But there is the chance of something going crazy with, guns, fights. I mean, people just don't understand your role or why you're there, why you're in uniform. So really, it's just expecting the unexpected.
Well, so have you seen the movie Civil War? Do you ever go to the movies? Is that like a thing?
Before I had a child, I went a lot more. I have not seen Civil War.
Okay. It's right up your alley because
Yeah.
after having conversations with you, I think you'd find it super
I
interesting.
think I saw the previews and I wanted to see it.
It's a very good movie, and it's basically like, the current state of our political environment leads to Texas and California seceding together from the US. Now, I wouldn't say those two states would end up seceding together, but really, when you break it down, I don't doubt it really. I think maybe that could happen. Anyways, this whole thing, that's the scene safety thing is what I thought about at the very beginning, because the very beginning of the movie, they're like at this peaceful protest, and everything looks like it's going to play out okay, and then suddenly somebody runs out into the group of people and blows up.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm like, man, look, I mean, because there's medics nearby, and I'm like, that situation happens.
Well, even years before, you have the shooting in Reno during that country concert. You have the Boston Marathon bombing. I mean, it's as big as 9/11 that we've seen in our lifetime. Like,
Yeah, which is
unexpected and can happen anywhere.
Oh yeah.
And you can be anywhere in any situation, whether it's like a volunteer role, paid role, or just like a spectator itself with training. Um, you have all these things going in your head that, I mean, there's so many different scenarios for any of these.
It makes it so hard to like, it makes it harder to be compassionate sometimes because you're so like on edge trying to make sure that like everything is okay. It's in those kinds of situations. Like not every call you get is like that. A lot of calls feel
Like
real
if it
chill
happened or like building up into like preparing for that. I think I'm the opposite, preparing for it, as like I don't even think about that half the time, which might be why I have some stories.
I guess
also like in the middle of it, I don't know. I turn it. Something turns on in me that just, this is what needs to happen, and
yeah,
A, B, C, and D, and then.
And that's true. I feel the same way. Like when I'm in a situation, really any kind of situation,
You're like
in
a
which,
robot.
yeah, which most people would panic. I'm just like, I'm just doing what I'm doing. Which is why it's first responders are a breed of their own, because not everybody can do that. And so it's like the weirdest superpower ever.
Well, I remember like snowboarding one year and someone went into cardiac arrest in front of me, and then like, and that just plays out. It's just everyone starts freaking out, and then me jumping down, and then a nurse practitioner and the ER doctor all in the same area, kind of just like
that worked out really well.
And it just kind of worked out beautifully. I mean, in some kind of
was this like recently?
Like 3-4 years ago.
Jeez.
Yeah, but like everyone freaks out around you, but then something turns on and you're just, oh, this is what I need to do.
Was it outside?
Yeah, we were standing for lift tickets.
Oh my gosh.
Right in the morning.
So it was cold too.
Cold, Colorado.
And that's miserable.
Oh yeah.
I hate working scenes like in the ice and the snow.
Yeah.
Because you're wet and you're cold and you're like, I just want to get this person off the ground and in the ambulance.
It was a nice day, but it all worked out the way it needed to, and they had an ambulance pretty quickly over there. And
did you get them back?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Doesn't happen very often.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's like the myth I try to dispel immediately to students is it doesn't work like that. Like, one, we don't shock flatline, which how hard would it be in the movies for them to just know the difference and put the right rhythm up there? It takes like 2 seconds of fact checking.
Sure. Or even like having like a NGOG as an innovation.
Yeah.
As a ET tube.
Yeah, like these are super simple things and nobody does it. So later in the year, like towards Halloween, I'm doing an episode with a guy that I consider a horror movie expert. And we're going to talk about slasher scenes and how realistic they are, unrealistic. And so I'm coming at it from the medical side, like you wouldn't die from that.
Yeah.
Or that dude would have been dead a long time ago, which is more so the case in most movies. I don't know, TV shows, it seems like the things that they die from are like minor, in my opinion. Like they'll get shot like nowhere near a vital organ in like the lower part of the gut or something, like where the appendix would be.
Yeah.
And they'll be dead. Like,
the only thing for me is like they're never in that scenario. Like in the real world, that would never happen.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There's always those commercials like the horror films. There's a car or there's a shed with a bunch of chainsaws, and they run away from the person behind the chainsaws. Like, but
most of the time, if I find myself in a creepy situation, I'm just like, we should probably just leave.
Yeah,
that's why we have a car. Let's get out of this
the back
place.
of the ambulance.
Exactly.
You're screwed.
Have you ever listened to any of the episodes of the podcast? It's okay if the answer is no.
Yeah.
Okay.
The answer's no.
So, back during COVID, I started doing this thing where it was a zombie apocalypse. Like I got real bored. And so my episodes were this story I was telling about zombies. And the premise was that I was with Mark Flores when all the zombie apocalypse.
He was speaking with you, or
no. Like that's the storyline. He's just a character in the story, and I was so creative I didn't even come up with different names. And
sad that I wasn't character.
I'm sorry. Hey, maybe I would have met you somewhere along the way.
Maybe.
But he was on the ambulance with me, and so we were both in this apocalypse together, but on an ambulance. And so that was the premise of the zombie apocalypse, is we were rolling through the apocalypse on an ambulance. And it was just
what's really kind of sad is I've had these thoughts of like, man, if I was in a zombie apocalypse, like what would I do? My first thought is go get an ambulance and stock it with a bunch of stuff.
I mean, you
got all the room.
Yeah, exactly.
Already got medical supplies on it.
That was my thought. I was like, look at this. Like, I could live a long time like that.
Yeah.
But eventually,
Nerd.
my thing is, I think the gas would end up being the problem.
Oh, sure.
Diesel or gas, you'd be screwed eventually.
Any vehicle, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's why in every zombie movie there's like highways full of broken down vehicles.
Except for Zombieland.
Yeah, except for Zombieland, where like every car they get in has gas in it.
Yep.
Like nuts. Why would anybody get out of their car?
The keys are somewhere, and
I
got ammunition and guns in there. And
that's how you know it wasn't a first responder that was driving that car, because they would have been like, oh, I'm just gonna stay in the car. Yeah, we'll be all right. Okay, so scene safety
and zombies.
And zombies. Hey, it's a relevant topic. It's a relevant subtopic. So, you know, we have to teach scene safety all the time at our school, and so like it's a big deal. My instructors, every scenario is BSI, is a scene safe. And it's one of those things that the students really kind of shrug off, like, oh, is my scene safe? Yeah, but it is. And it just isn't always true. I mean, I've had people try to fight me. I've had people try to stab me. And when we get to your story, it really gets elevated. But this is just minor incidents. Like when I think back on it, I'm just like, well, that's just something that was happening at the moment. But the scene is very rarely completely safe, for one.
I'd argue it's never completely
safe. Yeah, I guess that's true. And so just assuming it, and maybe we're doing a disservice by teaching it this way, that, oh yeah, your scene's safe, is really dangerous. Like if we continue to like put that in people's heads that the scene is going to be safe, and in some areas that's just kind of how it plays out most of the time.
Cool thought.
Do what?
That's a cool thought. I mean, I heard a story of a firefighter in the area saying that they were on a traffic accident, and they were working on a patient, and the apparatus was blocking the flow of traffic, just like policy says, and someone still veered into the fire truck. Big flashing lights, you just drive into it.
It's nuts.
And he had to jump off of, like, they were on a bridge. He had to jump off of the bridge and holding onto a rope, and kind of like that kind of what saved him. He jumped off the bridge and held onto a rope.
That's like a movie.
And like, yeah, like, so in a medical scenario, like, is my scene safe? Well, you're on a highway with passerbyers going 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know, just having that in the back of your head, like, I need to be aware of this during my scenario, that there's people driving.
Well, and you think about how difficult that can be, because we do get so focused in on trying to like do our job. Like it could be really hard to notice that there's something else going on around you, but you do get really good at it. Like, I mean, I'll say, like, you get used to it, and you get to where it's just second nature to pay attention to your environment.
You kind of have to when you're growing up in this field.
Yes, absolutely.
And it grows. I mean, day one, you're not gonna be like that.
No. Day one, I would say I probably put myself in danger on a regular basis.
Yeah, even sitting on beds with bed bugs.
Yeah,
I did that a few times.
If there's anything out there that's more dangerous than bed bugs, I would love to see it. That's the grossest thing to me.
Yeah,
is the bed bug.
Bringing it home. And
you were on the truck that time? You were a student on the truck when we had to go back to the station and like change out of our clothes and everything, weren't you?
It's probably when I sat on the bed bug.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, firefighters were all like spraying stuff on their boots. I was like, what are y'all doing?
That was it.
And they said, there's bed bugs in there.
That was it. We went to the hotel that's right over here. We were on a call there, and there was like 7 people in this hotel room living there. And it's really sad that that's a situation that people end up in. And so I don't want to make light of, like, you know, not everybody's blessed with the same things. But dang, that was a rough situation.
Yeah.
And we ended up having to call CPS and like all this other stuff, which, hey, your sister used to work for CPS, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll have to have her on here and talk about that sometime. So, possible hazards. So we've talked about several of them. We've talked about vehicles on wreck scenes, definitely a huge hazard. There's so many videos out there of fire trucks or ambulances or cops getting hit on the side of the road. You got the patient themselves can be a danger. Toxins, chemicals. I mean, really, you could just name a
Weather.
million different things. I mean, weather is a big one that we don't think of hard enough sometimes, you know, because the weather plays a factor in multiple ways. Like you got wet roads, then the traffic becomes even more of a hazard. Or you got wet roads, you slip when you're walking, which I know that sounds like pretty minor compared to the other things you're talking about.
I've heard of people tearing ACLs
Yeah,
on the way to a medical call because they're walking
exactly.
too fast and there's ice in the
That's
middle.
why they tell us not to run.
Mhm.
It's a scene.
I've been yelled at
safety
by
thing.
many patients who I'm not in a hurry for going to this patient. It's like,
I've had the same experience, and it's really hard not to be like, do you realize what you called 911 for though? So
well, this guy was in cardiac arrest. One thing,
well, he didn't yell at you then.
yeah. Bystanders.
Yeah, the bystanders are usually the ones that are most frustrated about our speed that we're moving. And I would say I'm not ever just casually walking.
Yeah, it's not lackadaisical.
No,
it's purposeful.
Yes, it's purposeful. It's a good pace, but no, I'm not going to run on a scene. It doesn't help anybody. It just puts me in
And it
danger.
amps people up too. Amps your fellow responders up. Amps
Yeah.
people up on bystanders.
Well, in part, one of the biggest part of our job is to keep
People
everybody calm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if I'm panicking, how are you going to believe me when I'm like, oh, I think you're going to be okay? Which that's a whole different conversation of how do you communicate with your patient when they're not going to be okay.
Yeah.
We should do that one sometime. That one's fun. So I'm gonna hand it to you to tell us the story that I really want to talk about. Which is you had a pretty crazy experience with a patient, right?
Yes.
So walk us through that from got the call all the way through. Tell us the story. I'm going to close my eyes and feel the story.
Sure. Well, I'm sitting in the United parking lot, probably playing some kind of Sudoku or watching a movie or probably actually studying because that's what I do on my off time. Study medical stuff.
Smarty pants.
Yeah. That's a lie. I'm probably watching movies.
I sit there and I read my book again.
And thinking about push-ups and all the reps I'm about to do. And no, so we're sitting in the United parking lot on South 14th. That's real. And we get a call for a altered mental status and a 70-something-year-old man or 60-something-year-old man, altered mental status. So I think it's a Bravo response. So we're going there, lights and sirens, and we arrive on scene. And on scene are 2 or 3 police units, and we have our CRT team. You know, are you familiar with CRT?
Yeah, the
critical response
team. Yeah, they help with mental health
Yep.
issues.
They're staffed with in our city. They're staffed with a paramedic, a police officer, and a social worker, mental health social worker.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept.
And they cruise around in a SUV together, and they it's really lighten the load on us on the 911 side because they visit these patients constantly and they know them very well. And so this guy was walking around knocking on doors, random doors, saying that, hey, I have work to do. And one of these ladies called 911 because she kind of felt uneasy about the situation. So cops came. Cops realized that he was a little bit off his rockers. So they call for the CRT unit. And the paramedic assesses this gentleman. And she believed that, and in EMS, we do what we call impressions. We don't diagnose, but we do give impressions. That kind of helps our treatment plan on what we want to do next. Her impression was that he had some kind of chemical imbalance going on. So she calls 911, the ambulance service, to come pick him up and take him to the hospital, check out his blood work. So then I get on scene and I have a different impression. My impression is this dude probably has some form of Alzheimer's or dementia going on, like sundowners. What's going on is like he just seems confused. He's answering questions, he's communicating with us, we're joking around. He just seems confused. So my partner, her name is Tawny, she's actually my sister-in-law. And at the time she was pregnant with my now niece. Kind of cool. I have her take the patient to the back of the ambulance to do our initial sets of vitals. And I'm talking to the police officers, talking to the medic, and just kind of getting more of a history on this patient. So then we get in the back of the ambulance, and the vitals all look great. He's answering questions well. He's stable. He's just a little bit off. Um, and I tell Tawny, like, okay, Tawny, this is gonna be your patient. So in our city, that it's a basic call. EMT can run the call, and then paramedic can drive. We had no need for an IV, no need for medications. I didn't need to look at his heart. Um, so yeah, it was gonna be a nice, easy trip, taxi to the hospital. And right when I was about to leave the ambulance, the officer walked up to me and said, "Hey, we're actually this guy has a warrant for arrest for sexual assault charges or sexual something charges." So then I'm like, "Okay, well, Tawny, you drive. I'm gonna be back here." And I still ran at BLS because there's no need for anything else. So now we're on our way to the hospital, and the layout of the ambulance, for those who don't know what an ambulance looks like in the back, so you have the stretcher on the left side of the box. On the right side is what we call the bench seat. A lot of times we're doing active treatments there. We're talking with the patient there. We can be eye to eye. Behind the stretcher is what we call the captain's chair. And that's kind of, you have like a little table there, access to all our medications, IVs, any kind of supplies, the radios there. We can have a view of the monitor to kind of watch their heart rate, SpO2, vitals, blood pressure. So that's usually where I'm sitting if I'm like not talking to the patient actively.
Mm-hmm.
So the start of the transport, I'm sitting on the bench seat. We're talking. He's thirsty. His mouth is dry. He asks for some water. I give him a bottle of water. Tawny hits a bump and it spills all over him. We're just laughing about this. Like, he's laughing about how clumsy he is. I'm blaming my partner, just the usual stuff. And so we're all having this joking time. And I'm asking his medical history, like, "Hey, you take any medications?" He says, "Yes, they're in my bag." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm going to go through your bag and see what they are." And he's like, "Well, I'd rather you not." And his explanation was like, "That's everything that I own. And it's like me asking to go into your house and search for something." And because he was a stable patient and I really had no need to kind of evade his personal space, because that's what he said, is okay, that's fine. It's not that important to me to know what medications you're on. Hindsight, it probably was. And it also would have helped me in the next scenario going on forward. But anyways, so then I'm getting in the captain's chair, the chair behind the stretcher. We're on Ambler, I think Willis. Stopped at a red light, and I see him kind of fumbling around with his seatbelts. I see that he's taken them off, but I'm like in the middle of a radio report telling the hospital what we're bringing them. And then while I'm halfway through this radio report, I see him stand up out of his stretcher. So then I immediately drop the radio on the seat and go to grab this guy's shoulder. "Hey, we're about to move. Get back on the stretcher." Well, he turns around and has a gun in my face. So his stuff was placed in the back corner of the ambulance. Prior to getting vitals, he folded up his jacket really nice, placed it on top of his backpack, and it was just all there in his line of sight. Well, then first thing I do is stick my hands up and I start walking backwards towards the captain's chair. I sit down on the captain's chair, and then I actually key up on purpose. I sit on the radio and hit the button so people can hear what I'm saying, so that they know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So then he's talking to me. I don't exactly remember what he said, but I'm getting out of here. Like, he starts scooting closer to me. He sits down on the bench seat, the edge of the bench seat. So he's about 2 feet away from my face with the gun. And then my partner is seeing all this in the rearview mirror. She's acting like she doesn't see it. So she's on her end, I found out later, was trying to key up, change radio stations. So in the past, it's different now, but we had a channel for our dispatch and we had a channel for the hospital.
Right.
I guess that's not different, but there's a different part I'll talk about later. But so we were on the hospital channel, which they can barely hear you on if you're holding the mic to your face, let alone if you're sitting on it.
Right.
So she was trying to key up to our dispatch channel to call for help without him knowing. Well, because I was keyed up, she couldn't change channels, which we learned that afterwards. So now she's like looking at the radio, like, what's going on? Why is this not changing? She doesn't know that I'm sitting on it. And he notices that she's messing with the radio. So he turns his head and said, "Hey, girl, don't mess with that radio. And the minute he turned his head, I was able to jump on his arm with the gun and push it down. As I was pushing it down, that first shot went off. And I just remember pinning his right arm with the gun, with my left arm against the wall, and yelling for Tawny to get in the back of the ambulance. So she jumps out, tells dispatch what's going on. She jumps out, is running in the back of the ambulance, and then she hears a second gunfire go off. So he shot a second time. And that's when I looked down and saw that he had a revolver in his hand. So I was able to stick my hand between the trigger and the strike plate to where if my finger was there's no way that gun's going off anymore. So as long as my hand was there, we were good.
This is crazy. Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm like real into this story.
Have you not heard the story yet?
No.
Oh, cool. So I'm covering that strike plate. She hears a second shot go off. And so she runs back to the driver's side to see what happened. She told me later, she's like, I didn't know if you were shot back there, or I just heard the second shot. I didn't know what's going on. So then I see her pop in the door. I'm like, Tawny, come back here, just yelling. And I'm hearing her talk on the radio at the same time. And she runs in the back, and she was telling me again later that she was trying to direct traffic. They were just all stopped in the middle of the road watching her run around the ambulance. And she was trying to have people move because she didn't want gunfire to go out towards them, just stopped in the middle of the road. And anyways, she ends up opening the back door. And then all I remember hearing her is knife. And I look over my right shoulder, and then there's a knife coming towards my neck. And he had hit the back of my collar, the sweatshirt, and then hit me 2 or 3 times in the back of the head with this knife. I was able to, so my left arm's pinning his right arm with the gun. My right arm then took his left arm, pinning against the wall, and I just had my shoulder into him, pinning him against the ambulance. And then Tawny jumped back there. She was able to pry the knife from his hands, and then as I'm fighting off this guy, he's headbutting me, I'm headbutting him, because right now both of our hands are occupied. We're just headbutting each other back and forth. She's like checking the back of my neck, checking my head, like for injuries, like as we're going through this fight.
So you're in the middle of the fight, and she's like just making sure he's good.
It's an example of like, just going to robot mode. Like Tawny doesn't know what to do. She just she saw this knife come in my head 3 times.
Wow.
And the first thing she does is check me out. So then she's kind of holding this guy's legs, because now his legs are flailing, trying to get his body weight on top of me. And she's still on the radio calling for police. I'm yelling to this patient, like, hey, what kind of gun is this? Like, I'm asking, like, what kind of caliber are we dealing with? And he's telling me it's a mother effing Smith and Weston, and just yelling at me. And then I'm like, caliber, what's the caliber? Like, I remember having this conversation with him during this fight. And at one point,
why did you want to know the caliber?
Oh, if I got shot, I want to know what I got shot with.
Okay.
Figure that was important information to relay to somebody. But, I remember at one point I was squeezing his hand so hard on that gun, in between the trigger and all that stuff, that he's like, hey, you're breaking my hand, get off me. I'm like, I'm not getting off, sorry about your hand, but not getting off you.
You tried to shoot me.
And then finally the officer kind of comes up, walks at the back of the ambulance, and hey, what's going on? I'm like, hey, this guy's got a gun in his right hand, and then kind of perked up. So he walks around the side door, opens it up, and he's able to get this gun out from our hands. And at that point, other ambulances were there, supervisors were there. I remember one medic, I don't think I need to say his name. He grabbed him by the bell and was, get this mother effer off the bus, and starts trying to pull him like, oh no, this is 4, sorry, rewind. So the cop ends up handing Tawny the handcuffs, because she's there fighting off the legs, and Tawny gets to handcuff this guy. So now he's finally handcuffed. And I was able to like step off and just kind of relax a little bit. And that's when the medic came up, grabbed his belt, was trying to pull him off the box, and I had to talk the medic down, like, hey, it's okay, it's all done. Like, we don't need to injure this guy anymore.
We certainly can't attack this guy.
Yeah,
now.
it's just emotions were flared. And,
I would be too. It'd be hot.
And then so that happened. Then they called an ambulance for me and my partner, and Louis at the time was like, all right, Zach, I don't care what you say, you're going to the hospital, because we've had this conversation before. um, about a different incident. And I was like, no, Louis, I don't need to go to the hospital. Like, I'm fine. And he said, no, you're going to the hospital. And I was like, well, as long as I'm not right in the back. And he just kind of sighed and said, fine, get in the front seat. Like, but we're taken to the hospital. So he took me to the hospital, and then that's kind of how that played out.
My goodness.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I left some details out, but
It's a pretty detailed story. That
yeah.
is awesome. I mean, not awesome. The retelling of it is awesome
Yeah.
because it's just, man, that painted a picture pretty well for me. So one, good job.
Thanks.
Thank God it was you in the back.
I've heard that multiple times.
Yeah. Thank God it was you and not Tawny, but also thank God it was you and not somebody else.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that somebody else would have been able to react the way that you reacted.
I've heard that, like my size, my strength, my wrestling background.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've heard someone tell me, like, I'm glad you were back there because I might have actually killed him. This guy had like mixed martial arts experience, like, and a short fuse, and I believe that this guy might have actually killed this dude for pulling a gun on him.
Well,
so like I had this size and the ability, but I also had like
the chill,
this chill demeanor. Too chill.
Yeah. Well, you're a God-fearing man and you're a good man, and it means that your goal is not to harm. Your goal is to protect, and it's a God thing, in my opinion, a blessing that it was you. And I hate that it had to happen to you.
Well, not even, we're bringing that topic up. I mean, not only that, but just the fact that something I didn't say is, well, yeah, just me being calm in that situation, me having the chance to jump on his arm.
Yeah.
Those two shots fired right over our O2 cylinder, so I'm glad that thing didn't blow up in our face.
I guess we would have seen if that's what happens.
Yeah, I guess. And then the knife. So I got stabbed in the head 2 or 3 times in the back of my collar.
Mm-hmm.
My collar was really thick.
Were you wearing like a job shirt?
It was a jacket that, like, the collar kind of can fold out into a hood.
Oh, gotcha.
So I had the hood in, so it was like really puffy. So that there's a knife mark on there. The back of my head, there's a few scratches, but that blade he was using was a lock knife, and it didn't extend all the way. So he'd hit my head, and they would go back onto his fingers, and he'd pull back and then hit it and go back onto his fingers.
So it was cutting his fingers instead.
Yeah, it was, slicing his fingers rather than puncturing my head. So that was right there a God thing. I mean, there's lots of ways.
Yeah, because if he'd gotten that open, I mean, there's no telling what kind.
Yeah, that would have penetrated right in my brain, right in the back of my neck.
Gosh, dude.
So
that's incredible.
I didn't know it was happening until 3 or 4 jabs in.
Yeah, I mean, I assume you probably were just like, this guy's just hitting me in the back.
Yeah, I thought I was getting punched.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's incredible, man. To go through something like that and then be like, okay, guess I'll go back to work now.
Well, I tried. They wouldn't let me. So,
oh well.
I was in the hospital for 3 hours. My partner and I both like, all right, we're gonna be back on the truck, and they're like, no, you're not.
As your friend, if I were there, I also would have been like, hey man, probably not the best idea to just jump right back in.
Yeah, it was good. It's good that I didn't.
Yeah, you need a little bit of time to decompress that, because that's a big deal. And unfortunately, there are probably other stories like that out there. For EMS workers, and
Tawny, my partner that day, was later on was telling me stories of, like, she'd had multiple knives pulled on her. She's been in the career way longer than I've been in it.
Yeah,
she's had several times where she's had a knife pulled on her. It's the first gun incident.
I've had somebody try to stab me with the scissors before. They stole my trauma shears and tried to stab me.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, we're moving, and I will kick you out of the back of that door while we're moving.
Yeah,
you've got to put that down. And he was like, I'm gonna get you. And I was like, why? And I was pretty calm about it. And I didn't have to end up fighting him. He just threw him on the ground. He was just frustrated, and he was just responding really weird to it.
Yeah.
So never the kind of danger that you were in. That's insane. So I've got several questions related to that. So what were you, did anything like ring an alarm before that happened?
No, I've thought about that a lot. I think that at first I thought, man, initially getting on scene is just a everyday call. Like, this guy's a little bit confused. He's a sweet old man. I mean, 60s, whatever, big, 280 pounds. Um, and really chill. He was answering all of our questions. He wasn't fighting us. But then I guess another God thing is the fact that I just decided to be in the back instead of my partner, Tawny.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would have reacted if it was not me back there. I don't think she would have made it out, but also like that would have wrecked me mentally, I think, for years later.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That kind of damage that would,
Especially with like your unborn niece in there, you know, like there's a lot of different factors in there. So the fact that I just decided to take this call, even though I was probably X amount of reports behind, you know, and that's kind of where we are in our world, is trying to catch my reports.
Unfortunately, it comes down to that.
Yeah, it was just super chill and chill environment, and like even like on the bench seat talking to him, he was laughing with me. We were joking around, like, you know, I had my hand on his shoulder, like we were just very interactive.
Man, I wonder what switch flipped in him that made him react.
I thought about this too. I think that he's a very good actor. I really do. Like, I think he was acting the part. I think he knew he was going to be arrested, and I think he realized that the best way for me to get out of the situation is to transport. There's no cops around. Like, let me pull this gun on this ambulance driver or worker, and best case scenario, he just runs out the door. Worst case scenario is we both get shot.
Which he could have done at any time.
I mean, he had to wait for his time because it was all the way in the corner. He wasn't arm's length.
No, I mean, like he could have just been like, "Hey, I want out."
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
like, I mean, legally, if someone says like, "I don't want to be transported anymore," now there is like this ground of he was altered.
Yeah,
like
was he like A&O times 2
or 3? I mean,
yeah, and that comes into question.
His gray area, like I'll let some people who are altered go if they're like, I don't know, if they don't answer the question the way I want it to be answered.
It's like, a judgment call. I mean,
like with him being confused, and like he was saying that his boss just dropped him off to do some work. Another crazy part of the story is like this guy had a gun in his jacket, knocking on women's doors, saying that he has work to do. He already has history of these sexual violent crimes.
So there's no telling what he was gonna do.
I think he was there at that woman's house to do something bad, and I think that she had this weird sense going on that she needs to call the police. Because I mean, if she could have not answered the door and let him go, he would have walked to the next door, and who knows?
And to think this chain of events ended with you having to wrestle this guy with a gun.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess to answer your question, I had no idea this was going to happen. Yeah, it was very chill, relaxed.
Well, and that's
he was on meth too, so like I don't know what was going on in his mind, but
and that's really my point to that is, you know, that is how it is sometimes. Like there are no warnings that this is going to happen. Now there's lots of things that could have happened to catch this, but not necessarily on your end. It's just things could have happened before you even got there that I think would have maybe played out different, but I think it played out the way it had to play out.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And
nobody was really hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, even him, he's fine in prison.
Fine and in prison.
So like,
and probably a better situation for him, honestly.
Yeah. So.
Wow. Well, so got to turn my page here. I haven't really been following it anyways, but I think I'll look at it in a second. Would you have done anything different now?
Then I probably would have made more of a push to kind of see what was in his bag. Me moving his jacket off his bag, I probably would have felt something heavy in his coat. I don't know if I would have really looked into it, because it could have been a big wallet or I don't know, something.
Yeah, I would definitely not have assumed it was a gun.
Yeah, I know the cops had searched his bag, but they never searched his coat, which might have been laying on, I don't know, it might have been laying on a sidewalk maybe. They didn't even see it. I mean, we're all human. I mean, I know a lot of people on Facebook were just trashing the police.
Yeah,
and even trashing me for not doing a full assessment, like, because I didn't feel a gun on the guy, but
it wasn't on him.
I mean, it wasn't on him, and like we're all human on the cop side. Like, I have no bad feeling towards the police.
There's always haters.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with EMS or any kind of first responders. There's human error and everything, and always, you know, humans. We're working with humans who are always different. So yeah, I'd probably do that, push to get in the bag more. Something I do now is all bags go. There's a spot on the stretcher behind the patient where you can set their belongings. So all bags go on that spot. If they need to get in their bag and they don't want me to touch it, I'll still let them get in their bag, but I'm going to watch them get in their bag. So I'll sit on
Yeah.
the bench and watch them go through things. And my posture changes now. So I'm very chill, very relaxed. You'll see me talking to patients, sitting on the couch next to them, leaning against their wall, hands in my pocket, just very nonchalant sometimes. Um, Now it's more like I'm like a loaded gun. I mean, no pun intended. Like, but I'm like a spring. Like I'm ready to move in any direction. My hands stay out of my pockets. Um, just really trying to be able to move in any situation, whatever occurs.
Wow.
Um,
I mean, and you think about that, like I'm the same way you used to be. Like and you've witnessed me do it this way. My approach to patient care is to make them feel as comfortable and calm as possible
yeah,
so that I get the quickest and easiest
being
answers.
on their level, like just
Yeah.
being a person with them, and just
But I mean, when you experience something like this, it makes you think, you may be doing that, but the patient's not.
yeah, oh, for
And they
sure,
may have totally different intentions at any
sure,
point.
yeah,
So, and that's, if I were to have a follow up for everyone, or, a voice of or a piece of advice for everyone, it's don't ever assume anything about your patients.
yeah.
And for in your situation, it wouldn't have made a difference one way or the other, because, you got to transport the guy and
Well, something else we could have done is, I mean, he had an arrest warrant. I mean, they were going to arrest him at the hospital. Why not have an officer drive with you in the back of the ambulance?
yeah,
Like it's technically it's kind of should be in everyone's policies, but I don't know. One of those gray areas again. Like they don't want to leave their cars on the side of the road, and um, I don't know. I don't know what goes on,
that
but
seems like a petty reason.
yeah, maybe it is, but I don't know.
I know I doubt that that's what they were thinking in that
Sure.
situation. They were thinking
Well, and then
everything's fine.
this specific scenario, yeah, I mean, he was super chill, very cooperative,
Yeah.
even with the police.
Yeah,
Um,
and so I mean, and it's the reality is no matter how prepared you are, no matter how you try to control the situation, you could find yourself in these situations.
yeah,
And I feel like that's exactly what happened in your case. The situations felt in control, everything felt normal, and then just all of a sudden it wasn't.
and also
And
in medic school, EMT school, like what we're taught is like when you're in the back of the ambulance, you're in the controlled environment. Like you're always like, if you need to intubate this patient, you can do it on scene, but like it's uncontrolled. People are watching you. Like you don't have all your equipment in all those places
right,
around. Like you can get in the back of the ambulance where it's more quiet. It's just you and the other responders. It just is more controlled that way. And you have this like not false narrative, but false idea of like you're in a controlled area. Like you're here. Like
right.
patient's buckled down. He's not moving.
And the reality is we're still just in the back of a truck.
Yeah, like
It's
an
no
aluminum
different.
truck with it's probably even worse
Yeah.
safety than anywhere else because that's
Nowhere to
another thing.
go.
Seeing safety is you get hit inside of the car. I mean, you're not strapped in. I mean, that patient's barely strapped in. That's more for whiplash, not necessarily
No,
a
they're
rolling
still gonna
ambulance.
get hurt.
Yeah,
I think about that more than I think about any other safety issue,
yeah,
is being in the back of the ambulance. And they tell you to put your seatbelt on, but you absolutely cannot do your job
mhm,
if your seatbelt's on.
yeah.
You can't.
And I have a partner who's been up for 24 hours because those are our shifts are crazy.
Yeah.
So
They don't
at 3 o'clock in the morning, like
the environment is not such, or the work world of first responders is not designed in such a way to keep us on our toes. We're not given the tools necessarily or resource to be able to be alert and enthusiastic, and because we will work these
mm,
48-hour shifts or whatever, and I get, like, that's the nature of the beast. That's what we do, and I have no complaint about it, but it lends itself to mental health issues, to physical health issues,
yeah,
to situations like this.
family health issues.
Family, yeah, it's hard to have a good family life and be in this world, but it's an important job, and people, like yourself, are doing it because it means something to you to help other people. And and to be there, and even to go back into it after a situation like this and still be a caring human being and not look at every patient as if they're trying to shoot you.
Yeah.
That takes a lot. And so, your sister, if anybody that doesn't know, I work with.
You are the boss.
I am the boss. I work with his sister Brittany, and she's told me pieces of this story, but to hear the whole thing played out, it makes me proud of who you are.
Yeah.
And I think anybody'd be lucky to have you as their partner. And you seem to have had your partner's back that day, and you did a good job. You reacted in a good way. You didn't overreact to it. You just did exactly what you were supposed to do. So that's impressive.
Yeah.
So, well, this is probably a good stopping point for all of us, because we could go on and tell lots of fun stories.
Oh, sure.
But you've got a baby. How old's your baby?
He is 7 months.
7 months. What? I don't know if you want to say his name on the podcast or not.
Brooks. I don't know if it's a good idea or
Brooks?
bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kenneth Brooks.
Kenneth. I got it. I'm never gonna live that down.
Yeah.
You're right though. I signed like a million different papers that says your first name on it.
Grandpa's Kenneth Rusty, Dad's Kenneth Fred, I'm Kenneth Zach, and that's a Kenneth Brooks in there.
My name comes from the old man in Pet Cemetery who gets killed by the little zombie kid.
Wow. Now you love zombies.
Yeah. My mom was pretty odd. So, anyways, well, Zach, thanks for coming and being a part of this, man. It's always fun to catch up with you. And I know this is a really weird and unique way to catch up, but we got to do this again, maybe without mics and cameras too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So any of you out there, always in this the same way, if you're interested in hearing more about EMS, learning more about it, becoming a paramedic, becoming an EMT, or you just want to hear more cool stories, feel free to reach out to us. You can find information about how to get with us at www.texasemschool.com, and we'll catch you next time.
The stories about saving lives from the people who save them. This is EMTalk. EMTalk is sponsored by Texas EMS School, EMS training for Texas. Join Juddson Smith again next time, because the life he's saving could be yours.